Consider Amendment Number 8, printed in House Report 112-283. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 8, printed in House Report Number 112-283, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 463, the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your courtesies, and I am delighted to have seen my good friend engage in a dialogue and colloquy with my friend from Tennessee, and maybe I might even get the same courtesies, because this is a very important issue that also deals with constitutional questions, and I'm back with my young man and getting his immunization shot with a nurse looking over him, because I want people to know that this is about family. It's about the fact as to whether or not we make a statement on behalf of protecting law enforcement, protecting our families, and not fall upon the spear of the Second Amendment and the National Rifle Association. To my ranking member and dear friend, even the super committee is not without ghosts riding through. I understand they had a deal, and then Mr. Norquist comes riding through. Whenever we want to talk about getting together on the NRA, getting together on guns and the Second Amendment, the NRA comes riding through. So we've got the NRA, we've got Mr. Norquist, and we can't ever get any bipartisanship because the ghosts keep riding through. But my amendment is a very simple one, and it speaks to, again, protecting the lives of our officers, and what it says is to the state, having the state have a designated entity, a designated agency that requires an individual coming into another state with a concealed carry permit must provide at least 24 hours advance notice to law enforcement agencies of their intention to carry or possess a concealed handgun in another state. States must retain their ability to know which individuals are allowed under this newly proposed bill to possess and carry a concealed weapon. Now, my friend engaged with me a dialogue, a gentleman, I believe, from South Carolina engaged with me, or did not engage in a discussion. But just imagine a trooper with a traffic stop on, say, for example, I-45, that's in the state of Texas. It could be I-95 in Maryland. At 3 a.m., the car has a Colorado license plate. The driver supplies a Colorado driver's license. The state trooper goes back to his car. He can instantly validate this person is from Colorado with respect to their license plate and their license. Upon returning to the car, the trooper notices that the driver has a concealed weapon on his hip. The driver hands over his Colorado concealed carry permit. The trooper has no ability to determine the validity of that permit. Therefore, if that person had been required to notify a state agency in Texas or in Maryland, that might be readily accessible. I heard a comment about the inlet process. You can go to the inlet. Only 12 states have allowed electronic access to their concealed carry database known as inlet. It does not respond, in essence, to the other 38 states. My friends, we are recklessly passing a bill that we think is sorely needed. It does not in any way have anything to do with jobs. It doesn't have anything to protect innocent children. It has nothing to do with making sure law enforcement are safe. But I'm simply adding an amendment that would make it better. Let's know when you're coming into our state. Let's let our law enforcement know. Let's provide safety to the American people. I reserve my balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of her time. For what purpose the gentleman from South Carolina rises?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is based on the premise that any person who possesses a gun, including an American who legally purchases a gun and obtains a concealed carry permit, is a criminal and must seek permission to exercise his or her constitutional rights. It would be nice, indeed, Mr. Chairman, if we could get those who harbor criminal intentions to call ahead of time and inform local law enforcement of their plans. It would, in fact, Mr. Chairman, be ideal if they would let us know which store they were going to rob, which home they were going to invade, which car they intended to steal. That typically doesn't happen, Mr. Chairman. To require law-abiding citizens to have to call ahead is mind-boggling. Do we have to call ahead when we plan to assert our First Amendment rights? Do we have to call ahead and inform states we're traveling through of our intention to rely upon our Fourth Amendment rights? What about Miranda? Do we call ahead and reserve our Miranda reservations? Do we need to tell them which road we'll be traveling on, Mr. Chairman? And who do they call and what do they tell them when they call? Do they describe the gun? Do they tell them what caliber? And what is law enforcement supposed to do with this information? Does anyone really think criminals ever call ahead and announce their intentions? And what happens if a person fails to provide notice, Mr. Chairman? What is the designated law enforcement agency expected to do with this information? Maintain a database of all entering non-residents? Track the person's movement inside the state? Should a non-resident with a concealed carry permit engage in criminal activity in the state, is the state then liable for not preventing it? Would a person who lives in Maryland but works in Virginia be required to call every day, Mr. Chairman? And what if it's an emergency trip, the birth of a grandchild, a sickness in the family? Do we just postpone our trip so we can meet the requirements of this amendment? Or do we sacrifice our right to travel in self-defense because we didn't call quick enough? This is a practical nightmare. It's a constitutional abomination. I urge my colleagues to oppose it, and I yield to my friend in law enforcement, the gentlelady from Florida, Miss Adams.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Reserving time.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Gentlelady from Texas has 1.5 minutes remaining.
I'm so glad my dear friend rose to speak to the new phenomenon of apples and oranges. My friends, I am not coddling criminals. We know this is a distinctive bill that is not addressing the question of criminals who come to do us harm. What we are suggesting that guns kill, and we are suggesting that people use guns to kill. And on that lonely dark road at 3 a.m., when that trooper identifies your driver's license but can't identify whether or not you have a legitimate concealed weapons permit to carry, then we are asking for you to have help. We're asking for there to be 24-hour notification. I'm sure there will be the possibility of waivers, but don't tell me that a law enforcement entity, once known that they can go to the documentation that has the notification that someone is coming in from another state with a concealed weapon, it will not be useful. In fact, it will help. It will help this law enforcement officer tell this individual carrying legally, on your way, sir, on your way, ma'am, thank you. Or in essence, we might catch someone who has a concealed weapon and a permit from another state, but they are rushing across the state to get a wife or a husband that they're in a violent domestic abuse or a domestic violent altercation. And so let me just say, for all of the laughers, guns kill. And it is a shame that we allow the ghost of the NRA to ride into this place and just smack down common sense. Save the lives of children, because guns kill. Save the lives of law enforcement officers who leave behind children, because guns kill. And don't fool around with the inlet process that doesn't even work. Let's notify. Let's notify.
All those in favor say aye.
I ask for the
All those
support of my
opposed,
amendment.
no. Opinion chair, the noes have it.
I'd like the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Texas will be postponed.